Celia didn't realize the stranger blocking the inn's last room was her fated mate until the storm hit, and by then, it was already too late to run. The mountain pass had been clear when she'd started her journey that morning. Now, 6 hours later, the sky had turned the color of a fresh bruise, and the wind carried the metallic taste of incoming snow, the kind of storm that buried travelers who weren't smart enough to find shelter. The Wayward Rest was the only inn for 30 miles, a squat stone building that looked like it had been carved directly from the mountainside. Celia pushed through the heavy oak door, her fingers numb despite her gloves, and nearly collided with a wall of muscle. The wall was a man, standing with his back to her, arguing with the innkeeper in a voice that made her think of distant thunder, low, dangerous, barely contained. Dark hair fell past his collar, and even through his travel cloak she could see the breadth of his shoulders, the lethal grace in the way he held himself perfectly still while radiating tension. "I've paid double," he was saying. "The room is mine." "I'd give it to you gladly, sir, but the lady's been waitin' longer, and I promised her—" "I don't care what you promised, miss." The innkeeper, a weathered woman with steel-gray hair, crossed her arms. "Well, I do. I keep my word, unlike some folks." That's when he turned. Celia's breath stopped. He had the kind of face that made you forget to be careful, sharp cheekbones and a mouth that looked like it knew exactly how to ruin you, eyes the color of smoke and steel that held too much intelligence to be trusted. The kind of man her mother would say probably leaves broken hearts and empty promises in his wake. But when those eyes locked onto hers, something shifted. His pupils dilated. His whole body went still in a way that reminded her of a wolf catching a scent on the wind. That's when she felt it, a pull low in her belly, sharp and insistent, like something inside her recognized him before her mind could catch up. "No, Celia." His hands curled into fists at his sides. His jaw tightened. He felt it too. The mate bond, snapping into place between them like a golden thread pulled taut. "When you feel it, child, don't ignore it," her grandmother had warned in whispered stories by the fire. "But don't trust it fully either. Fate has a cruel sense of humor." "There's one room left," the innkeeper was saying, oblivious to the way the air between them had turned electric. "Just the one. Storm's gonna hit in less than an hour, and anyone caught outside won't see morning." She looked between them, shrewd eyes assessing. "So, unless you two want to flip a coin for it, I'd suggest you figure something out." The stranger's gaze hadn't left Celia's face. When he spoke, his voice was rougher than before. "We'll share it." "I don't think," Celia started. "You'd rather freeze to death than spend a night in the same room as me?" One dark eyebrow lifted. "We're adults. I'm sure we can manage to be civil." Civil. Right. As if civility had anything to do with the way her body was responding to his proximity. As if she couldn't feel the mate bond humming between them, urging her closer. The innkeeper's expression turned knowing. "There's only one bed." "Won't be a problem," the stranger muttered. Any other night, Celia would have braved the storm, taken her chances with the cold. She'd survived worse in the 3 weeks since the massacre. But her grandmother's voice echoed in her mind. "A dead girl can't bear witness, Celia. You stay alive. You tell the truth. That's how you honor the fallen." She was the only one left who knew what really happened, who had seen the traitor's face. If she died in this storm, the truth died with her, and her pack's slaughter would go unanswered. So she'd share a room with this stranger, this man who made her skin warm and her instincts purr in equal measure. She'd keep her distance, survive the night, and be gone by morning. Simple. "Fine," she heard herself say. "We'll share." Something flashed in his eyes. Not triumph exactly, but a heat that made her stomach flip. He turned to the innkeeper. "We'll take it." Before we continue, please take 2 seconds to like this video. It tells me you want more stories like this. The woman handed him a key, then paused. "Fair warning. There's no lock on the connecting door to the washroom, and the chimney smokes something fierce if you don't open the flue just right. But it's warm, and the roof doesn't leak." She glanced at Celia, something almost maternal in her expression. "You need anything, miss. You just holler. I'm 2 doors down." "She'll be safe," the stranger said quietly. Celia didn't trust the promise in his voice, didn't trust the way her body wanted to lean toward him despite every lesson she'd learned about beautiful men with dangerous eyes. But she nodded anyway, because the alternative was freezing to death, and she'd already made a vow to survive. The room was smaller than she'd expected. A single bed dominated the space, barely large enough for 1 person, let alone 2, with a worn quilt and pillows that had seen better days. A fireplace took up most of one wall, unlit and cold. A washstand with a cracked basin. A window that rattled in its frame as the wind picked up outside. Celia set down her pack and immediately moved to the fireplace, needing something to do with her hands. The stranger, she still didn't know his name, closed the door behind them with a soft click that felt too loud in the silence. "I'll take the floor," he said. She glanced back at him. He'd removed his cloak, revealing travel-worn leathers that did nothing to hide the muscled lines of his body. A sword hung at his hip, well used from the look of it. A soldier, maybe. Or a mercenary. That thought sent a shiver down her spine. "The floor's stone," she pointed out. "You'll freeze." "Don't worry, I've slept in worse conditions." She turned back to the fireplace, opening the flue the way the innkeeper had instructed. "We're both adults. We can share the bed without—" She stopped, not sure how to finish that sentence. Without touching? Without acknowledging the pull between them? "Without making it complicated," he finished for her, but there was something in his tone that suggested he didn't believe it any more than she did. Celia struck flint to tinder, coaxing the kindling to catch. The fire was a welcome distraction from the awareness prickling across her skin. She could feel exactly where he was in the room without looking, could hear the soft sound of his breathing, the quiet rustle as he moved to the window. "Storm's getting worse," he noted. "We made it just in time." She fed larger pieces of wood to the flames, watching them catch and grow. "Lucky us." "Is it?" He was closer now. She hadn't heard him move, but suddenly he was right behind her. Not touching, but close enough that she could feel the heat radiating from his body. "Luck, I mean. Or something else." Celia stood, putting distance between them. "I don't believe in fate." "Liar." The word was soft, almost gentle, but it hit her like a slap. She turned to face him, chin lifted. "You don't know me." "I know you felt it too." His eyes held hers, unflinching. "The bond. Don't pretend you didn't." "Feeling something doesn't mean I have to act on it." "No, it doesn't," he agreed. He moved to the window, giving her space. "But lying about it won't make it go away." Celia's hands curled into fists, reminding herself that she didn't have the luxury of wanting someone. Didn't have time for the heat that curled low in her belly when his eyes met hers, or the way her body seemed to lean toward him without permission. Those were indulgences for people who weren't being hunted, for women who had homes to return to, families waiting for them, futures that extended beyond simply surviving until tomorrow. "What's your name?" she asked, because that at least was safe. He turned back to face her, and something in his expression softened. "Seth." "I'm Celia." "Celia," he repeated, and the way he said it, careful, like he was tasting every syllable, made her shiver. "Where are you headed?" South. That's not an answer, Celia. It's the only one you're getting, Seth. Seth studied her for a long moment. You're running from something. It wasn't a question, so she didn't answer it. Or running from someone, he continued. His eyes narrowed slightly. Are you in danger? Aren't we all? She moved to her pack, pulling out the dried meat and bread she'd been rationing. The world's not exactly safe these days. Celia broke off a piece of bread, forced herself to eat even though her stomach was in knots. And even if I were, why do you care? Because... He stopped himself, jaw tightening. You're alone, in a storm, running from something you won't talk about. And I... Another pause, this one longer. I don't like it. You don't know me, she said again, but quieter this time. Not yet. The promise in those two words made something warm unfurl in her chest, dangerous and unwanted, a crack in the wall she'd built so carefully. But I'd like to, Celia. Don't. The word came out sharper than she intended. Don't do that. Do what? Act like this means something. The bond, it's nothing but instinct. Biology playing tricks on us. It doesn't mean we're supposed to... She couldn't finish. Seth crossed the room quickly. Celia's back hit the wall before she'd realized she was retreating. He stopped just short of touching her, one hand braced against the stone beside her head, caging her in without making contact. Look at me, he said quietly. Celia's gaze lifted, slowly, against her better judgment, traveling up his broad chest to the column of his throat, past his jaw, until finally her eyes met his. I'm not going to pretend this is nothing, Seth said, his voice low and rough. I'm not going to act like I don't feel it every time you breathe, like I don't want to. He stopped, and she watched him wrestle with himself. But I'm also not going to push. You want space? I'll give you space. You want to leave in the morning and never see me again? Something flickered in his eyes, gone too fast to read. I'll let you go. Just like that? No, not just like that. His gaze dropped to her mouth, then slowly lifted, his storm gray eyes holding hers with an intensity that made her heart stutter. It'll be hard to let you go, but I can tell you're already scared of something. I won't be another thing you're running from. The sincerity in his voice undid something in her chest. She felt it then, a treacherous softening in her heart. I need to survive the winter, she heard herself say. I need to get to the southern settlements before the passes close. That's all I can think about right now, not... She gestured between them. Not this. Seth nodded, slowly, then pushed away from the wall, giving her room to breathe. Then that's what we'll focus on. Surviving. Getting you where you need to go. The bridge is out. You heard the innkeeper. We're stuck here for at least 2 days until her son can get through from the next town. He moved to the window again, looking out at the swirling snow. When the storm clears, I'm headed south too. We could travel together. I work alone, Seth. So do I, usually. He glanced back at her. But the roads aren't safe. Packs of raiders have been hitting travelers. You'd be better off with company. Raiders. The word made her blood run cold. She thought of her pack, of the screams, of hiding in the root cellar while everything she knew burned above her. Seth was watching her too closely, his brows furrowed. Celia? What is it? Nothing. She forced her expression neutral. I'm just tired. He didn't believe her. She could see it in his eyes, but he let it drop. Get some rest. I'll take first watch. Watch for what? We're inside. Habit. He settled into the chair by the window, angling it so he could see both the door and her. "I don't sleep well anyway." Celia wanted to argue, but exhaustion was catching up with her. 3 weeks of sleeping with one eye open, of jumping at every sound, had worn her down to a raw nerve. And despite everything, despite the palpable tension, despite not knowing who he really was, she felt safer with Seth in the room than she had since the massacre. She lay down on the bed, fully clothed, her knife tucked under the pillow. The mattress was lumpy but warm, and the fire had taken the chill from the air. She could hear the storm raging outside, wind howling like a living thing, but in here it felt almost peaceful. "Seth?" she said quietly. "Hmm?" "Thank you for offering to take the floor, for not pushing." She couldn't see his face in the darkness, but she heard the smile in his voice when he answered. "Get some sleep, Celia. We'll figure out the rest in the morning." She closed her eyes, listening to the steady rhythm of his breathing, and for the first time in weeks, she let herself relax. The nightmare came anyway. Fire. Screaming. The smell of blood so thick she could taste it. She was in the root cellar, her father's hand over her mouth to keep her quiet. Above them, footsteps. Heavy boots. Laughter that made her skin crawl. "Check every building," a voice commanded. Male, cultured, utterly cold. "Leave no witnesses." Her father's hand trembled against her face. She could see tears streaming down his cheeks in the dim light from the cellar's air vent. More screams. A child, crying for their mother. Then an ominous silence. "Sir, should we torch it?" "Yes. Burn it all." Through the vent, she saw him. Just a glimpse. Dark hair, a wolf insignia on his leather armor, a face she'd never forget. Her father's voice, barely a whisper. "Remember him, Celia. Remember his face. You're the only one who can—" The high ceiling above them groaned, cracked, started to cave in. Celia woke with a gasp, sitting bolt upright in bed. Her heart hammered against her ribs. Sweat plastered her shirt to her back despite the cold. Seth was there instantly, kneeling beside the bed. "Hey, you're safe. You're here with me. You're safe." She couldn't speak, couldn't breathe past the memories clawing at her throat. "Celia." His hand hovered near her shoulder, not quite touching. May I touch you?" She nodded, and his hand settled warm and solid on her back, grounding her, bringing her back to the present. "Breathe with me," he said quietly. "In for 4. Hold for 4. Out for 4. Can you do that?" She focused on his voice, on the steady rhythm he set, and slowly her breathing evened out. The panic receded gradually, leaving her shaking and hollow. "Sorry," she whispered. "I didn't mean to." "Don't apologize." His thumb moved in slow circles against her spine, soothing. "Nightmare? Do you want to talk about it?" She shook her head. Couldn't. Not yet. Maybe not ever. Seth was quiet for a moment then. "When I was 12, my parents died in a raid. For years afterward, I had nightmares about it, about not being able to save them." His hand stilled on her back. "I still have them sometimes." Celia looked at him. In the firelight, his face was softer, younger, vulnerable in a way she hadn't seen before. "How did you make them stop?" she asked. "You don't. You just learn to live with them. Find people who understand, who don't make you feel broken for having them." Something in her chest cracked open. She reached for his hand without thinking, threading their fingers together. The touch sent sparks all along her skin, the mate bond singing with approval, but underneath it was something simpler. Connection. Comfort. "My pack was attacked 3 weeks ago by raiders," she heard herself say. "They killed everyone." Seth's hand tightened on hers. "Everyone?" Everyone but me. I hid, like a coward. The words tasted like ash. You survived. That's not cowardice. That's strength. It doesn't feel like strength. It never does. He shifted, sitting on the edge of the bed facing her. But you didn't let that night break you. You let it forge you. I'd say that counts. Celia looked at their joined hands. She wanted to pull away, but his touch was the first thing that had felt right in weeks. I saw his face, she whispered. The one who led the raid. I was hiding in the root cellar, and I saw him through the air vent. He had a wolf insignia on his armor. My father, before he... Her voice broke. He told me to remember, said I was the only one who could testify to what happened. Seth had gone very still. A wolf insignia. What kind? I don't know. It was dark, and I only saw it for a second, but it was detailed, professional, like military issue. She met his eyes. Why? But Seth wasn't looking at her anymore. His gaze had gone distant, troubled. There have been other attacks, other packs, all along the Northern Territories. The same pattern, total annihilation, no witnesses. You know about them? I've been investigating them. His jaw tightened, trying to find out who's responsible, why they're targeting packs. You're a soldier, Seth? Something like that. He looked at her again, and she saw conflict warring in his expression, like he wanted to tell her something but couldn't quite bring himself to do it. Seth, I hunt raiders, he said finally. Track them down, bring them to justice. It's what I do. Hope flared in her chest, painful and bright. Then you could help me. Help me find the one who... Celia. He cupped her face with his free hand, his touch gentle. If you saw his face, if you can identify him, you're in danger. These people don't leave witnesses for a reason. I know that. Why do you think I've been running? You need protection, a safe place to... I need justice. She cut him off. I need to make sure what happened to my pack doesn't happen to anyone else, and I'm the only one who can identify him. Seth searched her face. She could see him thinking, calculating. This man with the wolf insignia, could you describe him or draw him? I think so. Why? Because if he's who I think he is... Seth stopped himself, shook his head. I need to be sure first. But Celia, if I'm right, this is bigger than one raid. This is organized, deliberate. He stood, pacing towards the window. There's someone I need to contact, someone who's been helping me investigate, but I can't do that until we get out of this storm. Celia watched him and felt another piece of her wall crumble. Seth was a hunter of raiders, someone who'd lost his parents to violence, just like she'd lost her pack. Someone who understood. And her mate. The bond pulsed between them, stronger now after her nightmare, after touching him. She could feel his emotions bleeding through, concern, anger, something fiercer that resembled protectiveness. When the storm clears, she said, we travel together. You help me find the man who killed my pack, and I'll help you with your investigation. Seth turned back to her. It's too dangerous, Celia. I'm already in danger. At least this way I'm doing something about it. Celia? Seth. She stood, crossing to him. You don't need to protect me by pushing me away. I'm not fragile. I'm a survivor. And I'm going to see this through whether you help me or not. They stood inches apart, close enough that she could feel the heat of his chest, see the way his pulse jumped in his throat. The bond thrummed between them, urging her closer. You're going to be the death of me, Seth whispered, but there was admiration in his voice, maybe even pride. Or you'll be mine. She meant it as a joke, not knowing how right it would be in the days to come, His hand came up to cup her cheek, thumb brushing across her cheekbone. I won't let anything happen to you. I'm not asking you to save me. I'm asking you to fight with me. Something shifted in his expression, a recalibration, like he was finally seeing her as someone who could stand her ground. Partners, then, he said. Partners. He smiled. Not the careful half-curve she'd seen before, but something genuine and unguarded. It gentled his features, stripped away the hunter, and left just the devastatingly handsome man beneath. Then his gaze dropped to her mouth again, and everything stilled. The bond hummed between them, insistent and undeniable. Celia knew she should step back, that this would cross a line she couldn't uncross, but she'd spent 3 weeks running from everything. Just this once, she wanted to move towards something instead. So she rose up on her toes and kissed him. For a heartbeat, Seth froze with surprise. Then his arms came around her, and he kissed her back with a hunger that made her knees weak, like he'd been holding himself in check, and she'd just broken the lock. It was desperate, claiming, a collision of need and want, finally finding release. His hand fisted in her hair, angling her head so he could deepen the kiss, and she made a sound low in her throat that might have been surrender or demand. The bond flared between them, golden and bright, and Celia gasped against his mouth. Something was happening, something beyond the kiss, beyond the desire flooding her veins. She felt it like a pulse beneath her skin, warm and insistent, a stirring of something that had always been there but sleeping, ignored, dismissed as imagination. The same sensation she'd felt as a child when her mother had been near, like the air itself was charged with potential. The same feeling she'd gotten around healers and warriors, though she'd never understood why their gifts seemed to flare brighter in her presence. Seth's power washed over her, his alpha dominance, the sheer force of what he was. And instead of making her want to submit, it made something inside her reach back, respond. His breathing hitched. She felt his alpha presence surge, stronger than it had been a moment before, and realized with dawning shock that she was doing that. Seth jerked back, breathing hard. What was that? Celia touched her lips, still tingling. Her hands were shaking. I don't know. I felt... He looked at his hands, then at her, wonder and confusion warring in his expression. My power, it's stronger, like something amplified it. That's not possible. But you felt it too, didn't you? She had. The connection between them, yes, but also something deeper. Something in her own blood responding to his strength, reaching for it, enhancing it without her conscious thought. I don't have powers, she said. My father would have told me. He would have... Her voice caught. He would have said something before he died. Seth caught her hand. I think you're more than you know. He paused. Has anything like this ever happened? Before? Anything strange when you touch other wolves? Celia thought back. There had been moments, over the years, times when healers' gifts seemed to work better when she was nearby, when sentries could see farther on her watch. She'd always assumed it was coincidence. A long time ago, my father told me that my mother had a gift, that it ran in our bloodline, but she died when I was young, and then he never mentioned it again. What kind of gift? He never said. Any time I asked, he'd change the subject. She frowned at the memory. What are you thinking? I'm thinking that maybe your pack wasn't targeted randomly. His expression had gone grim. There are stories, old ones, about wolves who could amplify others' powers, make them stronger or weaker. They were called resonance. The word sent a chill down her spine. Isn't that just a myth? Maybe the myth has a kernel of truth. He pulled her to sit on the bed. Celia, if you're a resonant, If that's why your pack was, attacked, you're in more danger than I thought. Because someone wants to use me? Or kill you, so no one else can. Seth ran a hand through his hair, agitated. We need to get you somewhere safe, somewhere hidden. No. She stood. We're not doing this again. I'm not hiding. If they find you, then we make sure they don't. She faced him, chin lifted. You said you were investigating the raids. You said this was organized. If I'm what they're looking for, then I'm also bait. Absolutely not. Seth? I said no. He stood too, and suddenly the room felt smaller. I'm not using you as bait. I won't risk you like that. Well, it's not your choice to make. Yes, it is. You're my mate. That doesn't make you my keeper. She stepped into his space, refusing to back down. This isn't some ancient law where you get final say over my life. I'm not asking your permission, Seth. I'm telling you what I'm going to do. His jaw clenched. And if I can't watch you walk into danger? If the thought of losing you makes me, then you'll have to trust me to handle myself. She held his gaze. Because I'm doing this whether you agree or not. They glared at each other, both breathing hard. The bond pulled tight between them, singing with frustration and desire in equal measure. You're impossible, Seth said, but his voice had dropped lower, rougher. You're overprotective. Because you're being reckless. They were nose to nose now, and Celia could feel the heat radiating off his body, could see the gold flecks in his gray eyes, the way his pupils had dilated, the muscle ticking in his jaw. See the exact moment when his anger transformed into something else entirely. He kissed her again, harder this time, almost punishing, like he could make her understand through touch what words couldn't convey, that she mattered, that losing her would break him, that he couldn't bear it. Celia kissed him back with equal ferocity, poured all her stubborn determination into it, her desperate need to fight back, to seek justice for her fallen pack. When they broke apart, both gasping, Seth pressed his forehead to hers. We do this together, he said roughly, but we do it smart, carefully. Promise me. I promise. And if things go wrong, if you're in real danger, you run. You save yourself. Seth, promise me, Celia. She saw the fear beneath his command, the same fear she'd felt watching her pack die, the terror of being helpless while people you cared about suffered. I promise, she said softly. If you promise the same. He pulled back to look at her. That's not. Fair is fair. We both survive, or neither of us makes reckless promises. A smile tugged at his mouth despite everything. You really are going to be the death of me. Or the making of you. She touched his face, tracing the sharp line of his jaw. Didn't you say we're partners? Partners, he agreed, then quieter. And mates, even if you're not ready to. I know what we are. She cut him off gently. I'm just not ready to think about what that means yet. Is that okay? Seth captured her hand, pressed a kiss to her palm. I can wait. He pulled her back to the bed, settling them both under the quilt. Get some sleep. Tomorrow we plan. Figure out our next move. Celia let him arrange her against his chest, and she felt something in her settle, a bone-deep rightness she hadn't expected. His arms came around her in a hold that was protective without being possessive, and she realized this was the first time in 3 weeks she'd felt truly safe, not just physically sheltered from the storm outside, but safe in a way that went deeper, like she could finally stop bracing for the next blow. She could hear his heartbeat beneath her ear, steady and strong as a drum, could feel the bond humming contentedly at their closeness, that golden thread between them at a temporary peace. His hand moved slowly up and down her spine, soothing, and she let herself sink into the warmth of him, into this moment that felt stolen from a life that should have been hers, would have been hers, maybe, if her pack hadn't burned. Seth, when we find him, the one who killed my pack, what happens then? His arms tightened fractionally. Justice, whatever form that takes. What if justice means, then I'll make sure you don't have to do it yourself. His voice was quiet, absolute. I'll carry that weight so you don't have to. Celia closed her eyes, exhaustion pulling her under. Thank you, she whispered. His only answer was to hold her tighter. The storm lasted 2 days. 2 days trapped in that small room with Seth, learning the details of him she had no business memorizing. The way he took his coffee black and too hot, burning his tongue every morning but never learning. The scar on his ribs from a fight he wouldn't talk about, though his hand went to it sometimes when he thought she wasn't watching. How he hummed old battle songs under his breath while he worked, his voice rough but soothing. They spent hours planning, her charcoal-stained fingers sketching and re-sketching the face of the man she'd seen until Seth's expression grew darker with each rendering. They talked through theories about who was organizing the raids and why, their voices low and serious as they built a picture of a conspiracy neither of them wanted to believe. And through it all, they fought the pull between them, or tried to. But it grew stronger with every accidental brush of hands over the maps, every shared laugh that came too easily, every moment of understanding that passed between them like a secret only they knew. The bond hummed constantly now, a living thing that seemed to tighten whenever they were close and ache when they moved apart. On the morning of the 3rd day, the innkeeper's son arrived with news. The bridge had been repaired enough for crossing. They could leave. Celia packed her meager belongings, hyper-aware of Seth doing the same, across the room. They'd become so comfortable with each other's presence that the thought of separating, even just to travel, felt wrong, like a welcome spell dissipating. Ready? Seth asked. She nodded, slinging her pack over her shoulder. Where are we headed? There's a garrison 2 days south. My second in command is stationed there. He paused. But I need to tell you something first. Something in his tone made her stomach drop. What? I haven't been entirely honest with you about who I am. He took a breath. My name is Seth Blackwood. I'm the Alpha King of the Northern Territories. Celia's breath left her in a rush. She sat down hard on the bed, needing something solid beneath her. You're... what? I travel in disguise sometimes. It's easier to investigate when people don't know who I am. He was watching her carefully. I should have told you sooner, and for that, I'm sorry. The Alpha King. She'd been sharing a bed with the Alpha King, kissed him, touched him, made plans with him. She'd never seen his face before. Her pack had been small, remote, far from the capital, the kind of place royal proclamations reached weeks late, if at all. She'd heard stories about the young king who'd taken the throne after his parents were killed, but there had never been portraits nor any visits, just rumors and whispered speculation from travelers passing through. Celia, say something. I don't... She shook her head, trying to process. You're the king. Yes. And you've been hunting the raiders because they're attacking my people, my packs. His expression was earnest. Everything I told you was true. I just left out the part about the crown. Celia stood, paced to the window. Her mind was cycling through every implication. If Seth was the Alpha King, that meant he had resources, power, the ability to actually do something about the conspiracy. It also meant that being with him, accepting the mate bond, would make her a queen. The thought made her want to throw up. Her, a queen, A refugee with nothing to her name, whose entire pack had been slaughtered, who'd spent 3 weeks sleeping outside and rationing bread. "This doesn't change anything," Seth said quietly. "Not between us. I'm still the same person who—" "It changes everything." She turned to face him. "You're the king, Seth. If we're mates, that makes me my partner, if you choose it." He crossed to her. "But that's a long way off. Right now, we're just two people trying to investigate the raids. The rest, we'll figure it out later, if you want." "If I want," she repeated. "I meant what I said." He touched her face gently. "Just give me a chance to prove that I'm worth the complications." Celia studied his face, the exhaustion in the lines around his eyes, the way he was holding himself so carefully, like he expected her to run. This was still the man who'd held her through nightmares, who'd listened to her theories without dismissing them, who'd kissed her like she was the only solid thing in a world that was crumbling. The crown didn't erase any of that. "Okay," she said, "but if you pull any 'I'm the king, so I'm right' nonsense, we're done." Seth smiled, relief clear on his face. "Deal." They left the inn an hour later, mounted on horses Seth's man had brought. The ride to the garrison was quiet, both of them lost in thought. Celia kept thinking about the drawing she'd made, the face of the traitor. Seth had studied it with an expression that had gone from grim to outright furious, but he hadn't told her why. "You recognized him," she said finally. "In the drawing. You know who he is, don't you?" Seth's hands tightened on the reins. "I think so, but I need to be sure before I—" He stopped. "His name is Davrick Thames. He's my second. Or he was." Celia felt like she'd been punched. "Your second? Seth, that means— It means someone I considered a brother has been slaughtering my packs." His voice was carefully controlled, but she could hear the rage underneath. "If it's really him." "It's him. I saw his face." "Then I need proof. Evidence beyond your testimony." He glanced at her. "Not because I don't believe you, but because the council won't act on witness testimony alone. They'll want concrete proof." "How do we get that?" "We catch him in the act." Seth's jaw was tight. "He's supposed to be at the Eastern Garrison. If he's not, if he's out on another raid, then we follow him." They rode in silence for a while, the only sounds the steady rhythm of hoofbeats and the wind through the trees. Celia watched Seth's shoulders, the rigid set of his spine. She could see him working through it, every shared memory being re-examined, every moment of trust now tainted. The man who'd murdered her pack, who'd laughed while her home burned, had been Seth's brother in all but blood. "I'm sorry," she said quietly. Seth looked at her, surprised. "For what?" "That it's someone you cared about. That has to—" She struggled for words. "That has to hurt." His expression softened. "It does, but knowing the truth is better than wondering." He reached across the space between their horses, squeezed her hand briefly. "Thank you, Celia." They reached the garrison as the sun was setting. It was a fortified compound, walls 20 feet high, guards at every post. Seth was recognized immediately, and suddenly there were people everywhere, bowing, calling him "Your Majesty," looking at Celia with open curiosity. A man strode out of the main building, all military bearing and sharp eyes. "My lord, we didn't expect you." "Creed." Seth dismounted, clasped the man's forearm. "I need to speak with you, privately." Creed's gaze flicked to Celia, assessing. "And the lady?" "She's with me. Anything you say to me, you can say in front of her." Creed's eyebrows rose in surprise, but he nodded. "This way." They were led to a strategy room, maps covering every surface. Seth closed the door firmly, behind them. "Where's Davrik?" he asked without preamble. "Eastern Patrol. He left 3 days ago, said he had reports of raiders near the border." Creed frowned. "Why?" "Because I don't think he's investigating raiders. I think he's leading them." Creed went very still. "That's a serious accusation, my lord." "I know. That's why I need proof." Seth gestured to Celia. "This is Celia. She's the sole survivor of the Clearwater Pack massacre 3 weeks ago. She saw the face of the man who led the raid." Celia pulled out the drawing, handed it to Creed, watched his expression darken as he studied it. "It looks like him," Creed said slowly, "but this could be someone with similar features." "That's what I thought too, until I started putting pieces together." Seth moved to the largest map, pointing to marked locations. "Every pack that's been hit. Look at the pattern. They're all in territories Davrik was responsible for patrolling. He'd know their defenses, their schedules, their weaknesses. He'd also know when we'd investigate," Creed added, following the logic. "He could cover his tracks." "Exactly." Seth's finger traced a line on the map. "And every hit happened within a week of Davrik visiting that sector. Too consistent to be coincidence." Celia watched them work, her heart pounding. "If you're right," Creed said carefully, "then we have a bigger problem. Davrik couldn't possibly do this alone. He'd need soldiers willing to slaughter their own kind, funding, supply lines." "Someone with real power backing him," Seth finished. His hand flattened against the map, fingers spread over the marked locations. "This level of organization, the coordination required, there's more to this than just one traitor." "The Iron Collective," Celia said suddenly. Both men turned to her. "Before my pack was attacked, there were rumors going around, whispers about a group that wanted to overthrow the traditional Alpha families, replace them with a new order. We thought they were just stories." Seth and Creed exchanged a knowing look. "What?" Celia asked. "What is it?" "We've heard the same rumors," Creed said, "but no concrete evidence, just whispers." "Until now," Seth added. He looked at Celia. "If the collective is real and they're behind the raids, they'd need someone on the inside, someone who could identify targets, coordinate attacks." "Someone like Davrik," Celia finished. "But why target specific packs?" Creed asked. "If they want to overthrow the Alphas, why not go straight for the king?" Seth's gaze landed on Celia, and she saw a dark understanding dawn in his eyes. Because they're not just killing packs, they're looking for someone. "Resonance," Celia said slowly, the pieces starting to fit together in a way that terrified her. "If my mother had that gift, and if I inherited it, that's probably why they targeted my pack. They were looking for me." "And if the collective is hunting resonance," Seth said carefully, "they're building an army. Wolves who can amplify powers could make ordinary soldiers unstoppable. Or they're eliminating threats," Creed suggested, "making sure no one can amplify the king's power against them." Celia felt sick. "We need to find Davrik," Seth said. "Now, before he hits another pack." "The eastern border is 3 days' ride," Creed said. "But if we take the mountain pass, that would be 2 days, but it's treacherous." "I'll take treacherous over letting him kill more people." Seth turned to Celia. "You should stay here. Where it's safe. We're partners, remember? I'm going with you." She crossed her arms. "Besides, I'm the only one who can identify him with absolute certainty. You need me." Seth looked like he wanted to argue, but Creed spoke first. "She's right. If this goes to trial, you'll need a witness who can testify they saw him at the massacre. Otherwise, it's just circumstantial. Fine. Seth's jaw was tight. But you stay behind me, Celia. Always. Understood. They left before dawn with a small team of Seth's most trusted warriors. The mountain pass was every bit as dangerous as promised. Narrow trails, sheer drops, patches of ice that made the horses skittish. But they made good time. On the second day, they spotted smoke on the horizon. Seth called a halt, pulling out a looking glass. His face went white. "What is it?" Celia asked. He handed her the glass without a word. Through the lens, she could see a village, or what was left of one, buildings burning, bodies in the streets, and a group of armed men loading survivors into wagons. "Raiders," she whispered. "That's Pinewood Village," Creed said grimly. 300 people. "Not anymore," Seth said. His voice was cold, lethal. "Creed, take half the men and circle around from the east. We'll come in from the west, trap them between us." "What about prisoners?" Creed asked. "Take Davrick alive if possible. I want answers. The rest?" Seth's expression was merciless. "Do what you have to do." They split up. Celia stayed with Seth, her heart pounding as they picked their way down the mountainside. She could smell the smoke now, acrid and thick, exactly like it had been 3 weeks ago. Could hear screams carrying on the wind. The nightmare was happening again, just like Clearwater, just like her pack. Except this time, she wasn't hiding in a root cellar. This time, she was riding toward the flames. "When we engage," Seth said quietly, "you stay with me. Don't try to fight. Just help any survivors you can find. Get them to safety." Celia nodded, not trusting her voice. Her hands were shaking on the reins, and she didn't know if it was fear or fury making them tremble. They reached the village edge just as Creed's team hit from the other side. The raiders were caught off guard by the attack, scrambling for weapons. Seth was off his horse before it fully stopped, hitting the ground in a controlled roll that brought him up with his sword already drawn. Celia had imagined he'd be good in a fight. You didn't get shoulders like that without training, but this was something else entirely. This was a predator unleashed. He moved through the chaos, fluid, inevitable, deadly. No wasted motion, no hesitation. A raider swung at him, and Seth ducked inside the arc, his blade opening the man's throat before he could recover. Another came from the side, and Seth spun, his sword meeting the attack with a clash of steel that ended in a spray of blood. This was why men followed him into battle. Not the crown. This. Then Celia felt it, her power surging without permission, reaching for Seth's alpha presence like iron drawn to a lodestone. She tried to pull back, to contain it, but it was already happening. Seth's gaze snapped to her, eyes wide with understanding. "Celia?" "I can't control it, Seth." But she could feel it happening. Every time Seth used his alpha voice, her ability made it stronger, made it impossible to resist. Seth didn't waste time arguing. He turned, back to the fight, and let her power flow through him like a weapon. The battle shifted in moments. Raiders who'd been coordinated and deadly suddenly broke formation, some dropping their weapons entirely, others running for the tree line. The combined weight of Seth's amplified dominance was too much. Their wolves recognized a superior alpha and refused to fight, but Davrick was nowhere to be found. "He was here," Creed said, breathing hard. He held up a blade with a familiar wolf insignia. "This is his." "Then where?" Seth started, but the explosion cut him off, a deep boom that Celia felt in her chest. Fire erupted from the village center, a column of flame and black smoke clawing at the sky. For a heartbeat, no one moved. Then the screaming started. "The wagon!" Celia shouted. They were carrying survivors. Her legs were moving before her mind caught up. She heard Seth shout her name, heard his boots hitting the ground behind her, but the sound of those screams drowned out everything else. Screams like the ones from her pack. Screams she'd heard in her nightmares every night for 3 weeks. Not again. Not while she could do something about it. The wagon was engulfed in flames. Through the gaps in the boards, she could see movement, people throwing themselves against the walls, clawing at the wood, trapped. Celia grabbed the door handle, ignoring the heat searing her palms. It wouldn't budge, locked from the outside. Then Seth was there, his sword flashing. He cut through the lock in one strike and wrenched the door open. Get them out. Celia pulled people from the burning wagon, a woman with burns across her arms, a man who could barely stand, children coughing so hard they retched. Seth appeared beside her, already lifting a boy who'd passed out from the smoke. Wood groaned overhead. The support beams were buckling, flames eating through them like teeth through flesh. "It's going to collapse," Creed's voice cut through the chaos. "Everyone out." But Celia could still hear them, small voices crying in the smoke-filled interior. She pulled herself into the wagon. "Celia, no." Seth's voice, raw with fear. The smoke was blinding. She dropped to her knees where the air was clearer, crawling forward until her hands found them. 2 children huddled in the far corner, arms wrapped around each other. "Come on." She grabbed them both, one under each arm, and turned back toward the door. Above her, the main beam cracked like a gunshot. She looked up just in time to see it falling, too fast, too heavy, no time to move. Until Seth was there. Underneath it, his hands caught the burning wood, his whole body shaking with the strain of holding it up. The muscles in his arms stood out like cords, his jaw clenched so tight she could hear his teeth grinding. "Move," he gritted out. Celia didn't think. She ran, stumbling over debris, the children clutched against her chest. Creed was at the door, reaching for them, pulling them free. She spun, back. "Seth." He was still holding it. The fire had reached his hands now. She could see his skin blistering, smoke rising from his palms. The wagon was disintegrating around him, burning pieces falling like rain. "Seth, let go." She took a step toward him. His eyes found hers. For just a moment, she saw past the pain, past the determination, saw something that looked like goodbye in his eyes. "Run, Celia." The wagon collapsed. A scream tore from her throat. Then something inside her broke open. Power at an intensity she felt before, didn't know how to control. It exploded outward in a desperate, wordless plea. Seth's alpha presence answered. She felt it surge through the bond between them, amplified by her terror until it became something else entirely, something that didn't bow to fire or physics or the basic limitations of flesh. The burning wreckage blew apart, not collapsing inward but exploding outward now, pieces of flaming wood scattering like leaves in a gale. And in the center of it stood Seth, his eyes blazing gold, power radiating off him in waves that made the air shimmer and bend. For a heartbeat, he looked inhuman, untouchable. Then his knees buckled. Celia was there before he hit the ground, her arms around him as they both went down hard. His weight drove the air from her lungs, but she didn't care, didn't let go, her hands frantically checking him for injuries even as he tried to push himself up. "You're insane," he rasped. "You're one to talk." She was shaking like a leaf, adrenaline crashing through her. "You almost died." "So did you." He cupped her face with his burned hands, seemed to realize what he was doing, then started to pull back. Celia caught his wrists, held them gently. "Let me see." His palms were blistered, raw. She could see the pain in his eyes even as he tried to hide it. "We need a healer," she said. "I'll be fine. I heal fast." "Seth." "I'm fine, Celia." He pulled her against him, his face buried in her hair. Just give me a minute. Let me hold you. She wrapped her arms around him, feeling him shake, feeling her own terror bleeding into relief. They'd both almost died. I told you to run, he said against her hair. And I told you we're partners. That means we don't leave each other behind. You could have been killed. So could you. She pulled back to look at him. We're in this together, all of it, even the dangerous parts. Seth searched her face, then nodded slowly. Together. Creed approached, his expression grim. My lord, we have a problem. They stood, still holding on to each other. What is it? The survivors. They're saying Davrik was here, that he's the one who set the explosion. Creed paused. And they say he had help. Someone told him where to find the village, gave him the patrol schedules. Who? A member of your council, Lord Shaw. The name meant nothing to Celia, but Seth's expression went cold. You're certain? The survivors heard Davrik bragging about it, said Shaw had been helping them for months, providing information, covering their tracks. Shaw. Seth's hands curled into fists. He's been on my council for 20 years, advised my father before me. It gets worse, Creed said quietly. The survivors heard them talking about their next target. They're not looking for just any resonance anymore. What do you mean? Creed looked at Celia. They're looking for her specifically, by name. Someone told them about Celia, that she survived the Clearwater massacre, that she's a resonant, and that she's with you. Fear spiked through Celia. How would they know that? They must have an informant at the garrison, Seth said grimly, which means we have one more traitor. He turned to Creed. Send word to the capital. I want Shaw arrested and the council questioned. Find out who else is involved. What about Davrik? He'll come for her. Seth's arm tightened around Celia's shoulders. He knows she can identify him, which means she's a threat to the entire collective. So we use that, Celia said. Both men looked at her. He'll come for me. We let him. And when he does, we'll be ready. Absolutely not, Seth said. It's the only way to draw him out. You said it yourself. He'll come for me anyway. At least this way we control the circumstances. She's right, Creed said reluctantly. If we can lure Davrik out, make him think she's vulnerable, we can capture him. Get him to testify against Shaw and the others. Seth looked like he wanted to put his scorched fist through something. I don't like it. Neither do I, Celia admitted. But this has to end now. We can't let them take more innocent lives. Seth was quiet for a long moment. She could see the war playing out across his face, every protective instinct he had screaming at him to lock her away somewhere safe, battling against his knowledge that she was right, that this was the only way. Finally, he nodded. We set the trap together, but when Davrik comes... He gripped her shoulders, his eyes fierce. You let me put myself between you and him. That's not negotiable. Seth, please, I need to know I can protect you when it matters. Let me have that. Celia saw the fear beneath the command, the same terror she'd felt watching him nearly die in that burning wagon. Okay, she said softly. But you don't take any stupid risks either. We both walk away from this. Deal. He pulled her close, his arms tight around her. Against her hair, he murmured, I won't let him have you, whatever it takes. The vow should have comforted her. Instead, she felt an unease take root in her chest, because she'd heard that tone before, seen that look in warriors' eyes right before they did something reckless, something they didn't expect to survive. She pulled back to look at him, searching his face. Seth, come on. He took her hand, already turning toward the command tent. We have a trap to set. But as they walked away, Celia couldn't shake the feeling that Seth had just made a promise he had no intention of keeping, that when the moment came, he'd sacrifice anything, even himself, to keep Davrick's hands off her. They set the trap in a clearing 2 miles from the village, made it look like Celia was alone, tending to her horse, vulnerable and unprotected, while Seth and his warriors were hidden in the trees, watching, waiting. Celia forced herself to breathe slowly, to look natural, even though every instinct screamed at her to run. The sun was setting, shadows growing long, perfect conditions for an ambush. If Davrick was going to make his move, it would be now. She heard them before she saw them, the soft rustle of movement in the underbrush. Multiple footsteps, trying to be quiet. Celia pretended not to notice, kept fussing with her horse's saddle, her back deliberately turned. Well, well. The voice was cultured, cold. The same voice from her nightmares. The little resonant, all alone. How convenient. She turned slowly. Davrick stepped into the clearing, flanked by 6 armed men. He was exactly as she'd drawn him. Dark hair, cruel eyes, the wolf insignia gleaming on his chest. You're a hard woman to find, Celia. He smiled, and it made her skin crawl. We've been looking everywhere for you. Have you? She kept her voice steady. Why? For starters, you're valuable, rare, the last of your kind, as far as we know. He circled her slowly, predatory. The Iron Collective has plans for you, great plans. I'm not interested. That wasn't a request. He nodded to his men. Take her. They moved forward, but Seth's voice suddenly rang out, amplified by her power even from a distance. Stand down. The men froze, unable to resist his alpha command. Davrick's head snapped around, eyes widening as Seth emerged from the trees, his warriors behind him. Hello, old friend, Seth said softly. Davrick's face twisted. I should have known. You always were too clever for your own good. Not clever. Enough. I trusted you, Davrick. Believed in you. Seth's power was building, the air growing thick with it. How long? How long have you been betraying me? Since the beginning. Davrick's smile was vicious. Since your father took the throne. Since the old ways were abandoned for your weak, pathetic peace. So you murdered innocent people, slaughtered entire packs. You mean I eliminated obstacles? The collective is building a new order, one where power matters more than bloodlines, where the strong rule as they should. He looked at Celia. And she's the key. A resonant powerful enough to amplify an army. With her, we'll be unstoppable. You don't get to touch her, Seth growled. I already have plans for her, and for you. Davrick's eyes flashed gold as he drew his sword. His own alpha power rolled out, not as strong as Seth's, but focused entirely on his men, reinforcing their will to fight. I learned from you, brother, how to command, how to lead. A vicious smile. The collective sends its regards. His men shook off Seth's influence and attacked. The clearing erupted into chaos. Seth was on Davrick in seconds, their swords clashing with a sound like thunder. Celia watched them fight, these 2 men who had once been brothers, now trying to kill each other. One of Davrick's men broke through the line, coming straight for her. Celia grabbed her knife, held her ground. He was bigger, stronger, better trained, but she was faster. She ducked under his swing, then drove her blade into his thigh. He went down screaming. Another came at her. She felt her power surge, felt it reach for Seth's alpha presence. She didn't understand how, but she pushed, amplified his dominance, threw it like a weapon. The man dropped to his knees, overwhelmed. Davrik saw what she was doing. Clever girl, but you can't control it, can you? You're just broadcasting power everywhere. He was right. She could feel it, her ability responding to the fight, amplifying everyone nearby. Seth's warriors were stronger, but so were Davrik's men. "Celia," Seth shouted. "Focus on me. Only me." She tried. Shut out the sounds of battle, the clash of steel, the shouts. Let it all fall away until there was only Seth, his heartbeat echoing through the bond, his power burning bright in her awareness like a bonfire in the dark. Only him. Only this. Her ability responded, coiling tight like a fist closing. All that wild, scattered energy condensed into a single point, a lance instead of a flood. Then she let it go. Seth's power detonated outward like a shockwave. Celia felt it ripple through the clearing, pure, overwhelming alpha dominance amplified to a level that shouldn't exist in nature. The air itself seemed to bend under the weight of it. Every raider in the clearing collapsed, knees hitting earth, weapons falling from nerveless hands, heads bowing under a command their wolves couldn't even conceive of resisting. All except one. Davrik stood alone among his kneeling men, teeth bared in something between a snarl and a grin. "Impressive," he said, still on his feet. "But I've been preparing for this. Shaw's been feeding me intel on resonance for months. I know how to resist." He moved, faster than should have been possible, and had Celia by the throat before Seth could react, his sword at her neck. "Drop your weapon," Davrik commanded, "or I open her throat." Seth froze, his face going white. "That's better." Davrik's grip tightened, making Celia gasp. "Now here's what's going to happen. You're going to let me walk out of here with her, and in return, I won't kill her immediately." "Davrik, I'm not negotiating." The blade pressed harder. Celia felt it bite into her skin, warm blood trickling down her neck. "She comes with me, or she dies right now. Your choice, Your Majesty." Celia met Seth's eyes across the clearing, saw the calculation there, the desperate search for an out that didn't exist, saw the exact moment he accepted that there wasn't one, that he was going to lose either his best chance at justice or the woman he loved, and the choice was killing him. She'd promised him she'd run if things went wrong, but she couldn't run, not from this. So she made a different choice. She stopped fighting her power, stopped controlling it. She just let go. The explosion of power that ripped through her felt like being turned inside out. Every ounce of ability she possessed detonating outward in a wave that didn't distinguish between friend and foe, ally and threat. It amplified everything: Seth's dominance, Davrik's resistance, the terror of the dying villagers, the bloodlust of the remaining raiders. All of it magnified and thrown back into the world like shrapnel. Davrik flew backward as if struck by an invisible fist. His sword spun away, catching the last rays of sunlight before it embedded itself in the dirt 10 feet from his outstretched hand. Celia's legs gave out. She hit the ground hard, the world tilting, sideways, colors bleeding into each other. Distantly, she heard someone screaming, then realized with detached surprise that it might be her. Seth was hauling Davrik up by his collar, his sword already at the traitor's throat. Blood ran from Seth's nose, from his ears. Her power had hit him too, amplified his strength past the point of pain. "Give me one reason," Seth said, and his voice was barely recognizable. Raw, broken. "One reason not to open your throat right here." Davrik laughed, tasting blood. "Because I'm not the one in charge. Shaw, the council members, the collective leaders, they'll keep coming. Kill me, and you've solved nothing." "Then you'll tell me everything." Seth's voice was ice. "Every name, Every location, every plan, or I'll make you wish I'd just killed you cleanly. You don't have the stomach for torture, Seth. You never did. Seth was quiet for a long moment. Then he pressed the blade harder against Davrick's throat. Not enough to cut, but enough that blood welled up around the edge. You're right. I don't. He shifted his weight, and Celia saw what he was doing, angling the sword so Davrick could see his own reflection in the blade, could see the fear in his own eyes. But I don't need to torture you, Seth continued softly. I just need to hand you over to the families of everyone you killed. Let them decide what justice looks like. He paused. I'm thinking the Clearwater Pack survivor gets first turn, then Pinewood, then the others. However many are left when they're done with you, well, that's between you and them. Davrick's face went pale. You wouldn't try me. Seth's eyes blazed gold. You took everything from them. Why shouldn't they take everything from you? Slowly. The silence stretched. Celia could see Davrick's throat working, could practically hear him calculating his odds. Torture from a king who still had honor, or mob justice from people who had nothing left to lose. It wasn't a hard choice. His bravado shattered in that moment. Shaw has a compound, Eastern Mountains. That's where the collective meets, where they're gathering resonance, the ones we didn't kill. How many? 12, last I knew. Alive, but barely. Davrick's smile was vicious even in defeat. You'll never reach them in time. Shaw knows you're coming. He'll kill them all rather than let you rescue them. Celia struggled to her feet, the world still spinning. Then we don't give him time to run. Seth looked at her, concern written all over his face. You're in no condition. I'm the only chance those people have. She steadied herself against him. If I can amplify your power enough, you can get through Shaw's defenses, free them before he has time to react. It'll drain you completely. It could kill you. It won't. She met his eyes. We're ending this. Tonight. All of it. Seth looked like he wanted to argue, but Creed spoke up. She's right, my lord. Shaw will move the prisoners the moment he hears we captured Davrick. This is our only shot. Fine. Seth's jaw was tight. But we do this smart. Creed, take Davrick back to the garrison. Put him in chains, under guard. Interrogate him. I want everything he knows. He turned to his other warriors. The rest of you, with me, we ride for Shaw's compound. Now. The ride was brutal. 3 hours of hard terrain in the dark, Celia swaying in the saddle with exhaustion. Every time she started to slip, Seth was there, his hand on her waist, steadying her. Almost there, he murmured against her hair during the second hour, and she felt the words more than heard them, a rumble in his chest that traveled through her spine. You keep saying that. This time I mean it. His arm tightened. Just stay with me, Celia. Stay awake. I'm awake. But he whirled, kept going soft at the edges, her power utterly spent. Seth's heartbeat against her back was the only thing keeping her tethered. Tell me something, he said, clearly trying to keep her talking. Something I don't know about you. Like what? Anything? Favorite food? Worst fear? First kiss? A pause. Though I'm hoping I can claim that last one. Despite everything, the exhaustion, the drained power, the battle they were riding toward, Celia felt herself smile. Sorry to disappoint you, but you weren't my first kiss. Devastating, but was I the best? Are you fishing for compliments? Shamelessly. His breath was warm against her ear. Was I? She turned her head slightly, just enough to meet his eyes. Even in the darkness, she could see the heat there. The question that had nothing to do with ego and everything to do with this thing between them. Yes, she said quietly. You ruined me for anyone else, if you want the truth. She felt his sharp intake of breath. His hand on her stomach flexed, fingers spreading wide like he wanted to touch more of her, but was holding himself back. Celia. Her name came out rough, almost pained. Don't say things like that. When I can't. He stopped himself, but his forehead dropped to rest against the back of her head. When we get through this, when you're safe and rested and not half dead from using your power. His voice dropped lower, intimate. I'm going to kiss you until you forget your own name, and then I'm going to spend however long it takes making sure I stay the best at it. Heat curled through her despite her exhaustion. That sounds like a threat. It's a promise. His lips brushed the shell of her ear, and she shivered. One I very much intend to keep. For a moment, the exhaustion fell away. There was only this, his arms around her, his warmth at her back, the promise hanging between them of a future beyond the next battle. I'm going to hold you to that, she whispered. I'm counting on it. His arm tightened around her waist. Now stay awake for me. We're almost there, and I need you sharp. For the plan? For everything. He pressed one more kiss to her temple, achingly, gentle. Always. They reached the compound just before midnight. It was built into the mountain itself, all stone and iron, designed to withstand a siege. There, Creed pointed to a section of wall. Ventilation shaft. It's how they bring in air to the underground levels. Can we get through it? Not easily. The grate is iron, 2 inches thick. Seth looked at Celia. Can you amplify me enough to break it? She nodded, not trusting her voice. She was already running on fumes, her power a guttering candle. But she had enough for one more push. She had to. She placed her hand on Seth's chest, over his heart. Felt it beating hard and fast beneath her palm. Fear or adrenaline, she couldn't tell. The bond between them thrummed to life at the contact, that golden thread that had been growing stronger with every touch, every kiss, every moment of trust they'd built over the past days. She'd been fighting it, trying to control it, rationing her power like it was something finite. But not anymore. She opened herself to it completely, let the bond become a conduit, pulling Seth's alpha power through her, into her, transforming it into something bigger, something that didn't play by the normal rules. I trust you, she thought, so let's see what we can really do. Seth's eyes flared gold, not just a flash, but a sustained burn that made him look inhuman, otherworldly. His hands closed around the iron grate, and she felt the moment his amplified strength made contact with the metal. The grate didn't just bend, it screamed. The sound was high and piercing, like the metal itself was in agony. Then it shattered, fragments of iron exploding outward in a spray of twisted shards. Seth stood there breathing hard, his hands still glowing faintly with residual power, and looked at her with something like awe. What was that? He rasped. Us, Celia said simply. They poured through the opening, moving fast and quiet through dark tunnels. Celia could hear voices ahead, guards, prisoners, and what sounded like Shaw's cold commands. Torch it all, Shaw was saying, his voice echoing off the stone walls. Leave no evidence, no witnesses. Celia's heart stopped. They'd come so far, fought so hard, and they were going to be seconds too late. She could already smell the accelerant, could see the torches in the guards' hands. She didn't think. Didn't calculate how much power she had left or whether her body could handle it. She just grabbed Seth's hand and pulled, not his physical hand, but something deeper. The alpha power that lived in his blood, the dominance that made him king. She dragged it through the bond between them, through every shred of ability she had left. Her vision went white at the edges, her knees buckled, but she didn't let go. Seth's roar tore through the compound like a physical force, a command that spoke directly to the wolf in every person's blood. The stone walls trembled, dust rained from the ceiling, and every guard, every conspirator, every wolf-blooded soul in the building dropped. Knees hit stone in perfect unison, a wave of submission that started at the entrance and rippled outward through corridors Celia couldn't even see. She felt it through the bond, dozens of wolves falling to their knees, unable to resist, their own wolves howling in recognition of an alpha beyond anything they'd ever encountered. Even Shaw. Through the doorway, Celia saw him, the distinguished older man who'd orchestrated so much death, collapse as if his legs had been cut out from under him. His face was white with shock, then red with rage as he realized what had happened. But he couldn't stand, couldn't even lift his head against the weight of Seth's amplified command. Seth's warriors swept through the compound, freeing prisoners, securing guards. Shaw was dragged before Seth, his face twisted with rage and fear. "You're finished," Seth said quietly. "The collective, it's broken. Davrick is in custody. Half your co-conspirators are already under arrest. The rest will fall like dominoes." Seth's smile was cold. "You've lost." Shaw spat at his feet. "You can't stop what's coming. The old ways are dying, boy. Your precious bloodlines, your treaties, your weak peace, it's all coming down." "If that's true," Seth hauled him up by his collar, "you won't be there to see it." He handed Shaw off to Creed, then turned to find Celia. She was on her knees, trembling, drained to the point of collapse. Seth was beside her in an instant, gathering her into his arms. "I've got you," he murmured. "The prisoners, they're safe. All of them. Because of you." He pressed his forehead to hers. "You did it, Celia. You saved them." "We did it." She managed a weak smile. "Partners, remember?" Then the world went gray at the edges, and she let herself fall into darkness, knowing Seth would catch her. Celia woke in a bed so soft it felt like floating on clouds. For a moment, she didn't remember where she was. Then it slowly came back in pieces. The battle, the compound, pushing her power past all limits. She sat up carefully, testing her body. Sore, but whole. Alive somehow. "Easy." It was Seth's voice. He was in a chair beside the bed, looking like he hadn't slept in days, but a beautiful relief now settled over his face. "You've been out for a while." "How long?" 3 days. You burned yourself out completely. The healers said..." His voice cracked. "They said it was close, that you might not wake up." "But I did." He took her hand, pressed it to his lips. "Don't ever do that again. Don't ever risk yourself like that." "I can't promise that." "Celia, we're partners, Seth, equals. That means sometimes I'll be the one taking risks. You'll just have to deal with it." She expected him to argue, but instead he laughed, rough and a little broken. "You're going to drive me insane." "Probably." She touched his face, feeling the scruff of several days' growth. "What happened after I passed out?" "We arrested Shaw and dismantled the compound. Found 12 residents alive, like Davrick said. They're recovering now, under protection." Seth's expression hardened. "We also found evidence. Documents, ledgers, correspondence with other collective members. It's bigger than we thought, Celia. Operatives in half the packs in the territory. But you stopped them. We stopped this cell. But there are others. The collective's roots run deep." He paused. "It's going to be a long fight." "Then it's good we're in it together." Seth was quiet for a moment. Celia, about the bond, about us. I know this isn't the right time, and you're still recovering, but ask me, she said softly. He looked at her, surprise and hope lighting up his face. You want to ask me something? Ask me. Seth took both her hands in his. For a long moment, he just looked at her like he was memorizing every detail. I've been trying to find the right words, he said finally. The kind a king should say. Something eloquent or profound. A small, self-deprecating smile. But all I keep coming back to is this. I don't want to do any of it without you. Celia's breath caught as she tried to hold back her smile. The politics, the battles, the rebuilding, I can handle all of that. His thumbs traced circles on the backs of her hands. But the thought of doing it alone, of waking up and not having you there to tell me when I'm being an idiot, or challenge me in counsel, or just, his voice roughened, just exist in the same space as me, that I can't handle. Seth, I love you, he said, and the words were simple, unadorned. Not because you're a resonant, or because the bond chose us for each other. I love you because you climbed into a burning wagon when anyone with sense would have run. Because you see me. Not the crown, not the king, just me. And you stayed anyway. Because when I'm with you, I remember what I'm fighting for. He lifted her hands, pressed a kiss to each of her knuckles. I know it's fast. I know we're still learning each other. But I also know I don't want to learn anyone else. Just you. For however long you'll have me. Celia's heart was racing. Seth, I'm not asking you to accept the bond right now, not asking you to be queen or make any permanent decisions. I'm just asking. He met her eyes, vulnerable and open. Will you stay? Give this, us, a real chance. See where it goes? Celia looked at him. This man who'd started as a stranger in a storm and become the person she trusted most in the world. She thought about his hands steadying her in the saddle during that brutal ride, the way he'd argued with her about tactics, then listened when she made good points, how he'd stood in front of her facing Davrick, willing to die if it meant keeping her safe. She thought about the alternative, leaving, disappearing into some southern settlement where no one knew her name, starting over alone the way she'd planned, safe, anonymous, but empty. The choice wasn't even close. Yes, I'll stay, she said, and watched his whole face transform. I'll stay because when I think about my life a year from now, 5 years from now, I see you. I want you. The smile that broke across Seth's face was like sunrise. He pulled her close, kissed her soft and deep, pouring everything he felt into it. And Celia kissed him back, the bond singing between them, golden and right. When they broke apart, Seth said, I need to tell you something else about the bond, about what accepting it means for you. I know what it means. I'll become queen. Not just that. He pulled back to look at her. When we complete the bond, when you accept it fully, your resonant abilities will permanently link to my alpha power. You'll be able to amplify me whenever you want, but you'll also feel my emotions, my pain. We'll be connected in ways that can't be undone. That sounds terrifying. It is. He touched her face gently. But it also means you'll never be alone. Never have to carry everything yourself. We'll share it, the good and the bad, all of it. I want to say yes, she said slowly, but I don't want to rush into something this permanent just because it feels right in the moment. Is that, she searched his face, is that okay? More than okay. Seth kissed her forehead. We have time, Celia. There's no deadline on this. But you're the king. Don't people expect? Let them expect. His thumb traced her cheekbone. What I need is you, happy, whole, choosing this because you want it, not because of what anyone else thinks we should do. His eyes held hers. The rest we'll figure out together, one day at a time. Okay, she said, something in her chest unclenching. One day at a time. I can do that. Starting with today. Seth stood, helped her to her feet with a gentleness that made her heart ache. Think you can walk? There's someone who wants to meet you. Who? The other resonants. They've been asking about you. He smiled. They're calling you the woman who saved them. They want to thank you personally. Celia's throat tightened. I didn't do it alone. No, but you did it first. Showed them they didn't have to be afraid anymore, that they could fight back. He led her through corridors she didn't recognize, into a sunlit room filled with people. 12 faces turned toward her, the resonants, all different ages, all bearing the marks of captivity, but alive and healing. A woman stepped forward, middle-aged with kind eyes. You're her, Celia. I am. Thank you. The woman's voice broke. Thank you for not giving up, for coming for us. Others echoed the sentiment, crowding around, tears and smiles and gratitude so fierce it made Celia's eyes sting. We're going to stay, the woman said. The king offered us protection, a place here where we can be safe, learn to use our gifts without fear. And we're going to fight, a younger man added, train with his warriors, help take down the rest of the collective. Celia looked back at Seth and saw pride shining in his eyes. You're building an army, she said quietly. I'm building a family. He squeezed her hand. A real one, where people choose to stay because they want to, not because they're forced. The woman who'd spoken first touched Celia's shoulder. Will you help us? Teach us? You're stronger than any of us, if we could learn to control our powers like you do. I don't know how to control it, Celia admitted. I'm still learning myself. Then we'll learn together. The woman smiled. All of us, as family. Family. The word echoed in Celia's heart. She'd lost hers 3 weeks ago, but maybe she was finding a new one. I'd like that, she said softly. Celia stood on the balcony of Seth's private chambers, watching the sunrise paint the mountains gold. Behind her, she could hear him moving around the room, the familiar sounds of him getting ready for another day of council meetings and strategy sessions. The past 2 months had been a whirlwind, Shaw's trial and execution, rooting out collective sympathizers from the council, training the resonants, learning to control her own abilities, and through it all, learning Seth, the man behind the crown. She'd learned that he had nightmares too, about failing his people, and he needed to be held just as much as she did. She'd learned she loved him, truly deeply, in a way that had nothing to do with the primal instincts of the mate bond and everything to do with who he was. What are you thinking about? Seth asked, wrapping his arms around her from behind. That I was supposed to be in the southern settlements by now, starting over. Regrets? None. She leaned back into him. You are so much better than anything I could have planned. Even with the politics, the danger, the fact that half the kingdom still thinks I'm crazy for making a refugee my queen? Celia laughed. I'm not your queen yet. Yet. He turned her to face him. Does that mean you're thinking about it? She was. The bond between them had only grown stronger, and she'd come to understand what it really meant. Not a chain, but a bridge, a way to be stronger together than apart. Ask me again, she said. Seth's eyes widened. What? Ask me to complete the bond, to be your queen. Seth went very still. Then a slow smile spread across his face. Are you sure? His hands came up to cover hers where they rested on his face. Because once I ask, I'm not letting you take it back. I'm sure. Even knowing what it means? Especially knowing that. She smiled back. Now ask me before I change my mind. His laugh was low and warm. Then he dropped to one knee right there on the balcony, still holding her hands, his eyes never leaving hers. Celia, will you let me love you for the rest of our lives? Will you stand beside me, not as my subject, but as my partner, my equal, my everything? Yes. Her word came out choked with emotion. Yes to all of it. He stood, pulled her into a kiss that stole her breath and gave it back transformed. And she felt it, the bond completing, snapping into place with a force that made them both gasp. Power flowing between them, his alpha strength and her resonant gift intertwining, becoming something new, something even stronger. When they broke apart, Celia could feel everything. His love, fierce and protective. His joy at her acceptance. His determination to make her happy every day for the rest of their lives. I can feel you, she whispered in wonder. I can feel you too. He pressed his hand over her heart. Your courage, your strength, your love. They stood together as the sun rose fully, warming their faces. And Celia thought about that night in the inn, when she'd been so sure she couldn't afford to stop running, couldn't afford to want anything. She'd been so wrong. Sometimes the best things in life were the ones you didn't plan for, the ones that found you when you weren't looking, and changed everything. What happens now? She asked. Seth smiled. Now, we finish dismantling the collective, train the resonance, build a kingdom where everyone, bloodline or not, has a place. That's a lot of work. Yes, but we'll do it together. He kissed her forehead. One day at a time. From inside, someone knocked on the door. Creed's voice. My lord, the council is assembled. Seth groaned. They're early. You mean you're late? Celia corrected with a smile. Come with me. He offered his hand. She took it without hesitation. Always. They walked into the council chamber together, and Celia felt every eye turn to her. Some hostile, some curious, all assessing. She'd been attending these meetings for weeks now, learning the politics of Seth's kingdom, but today felt different. Today, she wore the mate bond like armor. Gentlemen, Seth said, his voice carrying absolute authority. Lady Celia has accepted the mate bond. She is now your queen, and she will be treated with the respect that position demands. Silence. Then slowly, the council members rose and bowed. It wasn't perfect. She could see resistance in some faces, calculation in others, but it was a start. And as Seth pulled out a chair for her, not at the side of the table, but beside his own seat at the head, she realized this was what partnership looked like. Not him protecting her from the hard parts, but the two of them facing them together. She sat, met the eyes of the council members one by one, and smiled. Shall we begin? She said. The meeting was long, full of debates and arguments about resource allocation and defensive strategies, but Celia held her own, her insights into the collective's tactics proving valuable. When it finally ended, Seth caught her hand as they walked back to their chambers. You were incredible in there, he said. I disagreed with you 3 times. Which is exactly why you were incredible. He pulled her into an alcove, kissed her soundly. I don't want a queen who just agrees with everything I say. I want a partner who challenges me, makes me better. Good, because I have a lot of opinions about your tax policy. He laughed, the sound rich and warm. I can't wait to hear them." They reached their chambers as the sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson. Celia moved to the balcony, Seth close behind her, and looked out over the kingdom that was now partially hers. "Penny, for your thoughts?" Seth asked. "I'm just thinking about how far we've come," she said, "and how far we still have to go. There will be days when the crown feels too heavy, when the responsibility feels too much. Any final regrets?" Celia turned in his arms, looked into those storm-gray eyes that had held her from the first moment. "Not a single one," she said. He kissed her as the last light faded, the bond between them golden and warm. His hands traced the curve of her waist, her spine, exploring her with a reverence that made her breath catch. When he lifted her, she wrapped herself around him, and he carried her inside. The bed welcomed them like it had been waiting. Seth laid her down gently, his touch both tender and sure as he unlaced her gown. She helped him with his shirt, her fingers mapping the muscles she'd seen in battle. Each piece of clothing that fell away was another wall coming down, until there was nothing between them but skin and trust, and the bond singing through their veins. He moved over her, into her, and Celia gasped at the rightness of it, the way their bodies fit, the way the bond flared bright and complete. They moved together in the dimming light, slow and deliberate, savoring every touch, every kiss, every whispered promise. When they finally fell apart, breathless and tangled together, Celia felt the bond settle into something deeper than desire, something truly permanent. Seth brushed her hair back from her face, his thumb tracing her cheekbone. "I love you," he said quietly. "I love you too," Celia whispered back. She smiled and curled into him, his arms coming around her. Through the open balcony doors, the stars began to emerge one by one. Whatever came next, whatever battles they faced, whatever challenges the future held, they would face them together. One room, one bed, one storm that had brought them together, creating a love that would weather anything. Where are you listening from? Let's meet in the comments. I love hearing your thoughts, and if you'd like to support me, please subscribe. It's free, and it helps more people hear these stories.